Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast, interview your ideal clients, and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to B2B Growth, and welcome back to another episode of a series that we've started called Category Creation. And I am really excited to talk with who we're going to be talking to today. His name is Anthony Kennada. He is the CMO at Gainsight. And when you think about category creation, Anthony's name is always at the top of my list. And what Gainsight has done to build out the customer success category is, in my opinion, rivaled by no one else in the startup game. I just think he's done a phenomenal job with it, he and his team at Gainsight. So, Anthony, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, James, man. Thanks so much for the kind words.
I'm super pumped. We've talked about this before actually on B2B Growth, but now that we're actually trying to build a category here at Sweetfish with content-based networking, I thought, man, I'm going to be super selfish and ask him to come back on the show and kind of give me a refresher course on category creation. Can you first start, Anthony, with were you guys in the midst of creating the category when you came on board with Gainsight, or was that kind of an initiative that you spearheaded?
Definitely the latter. And I'll admit, we didn't go in thinking that all of the various kind of programs and thinking that we were bringing to the table was coined category creation. We sort of started doing a bunch of things that felt intuitive. And then looking back, said, oh my gosh, this is actually what we're doing. There's a name for this. And so I joined back when the company was called JBera Software. It was based in St. Louis and India. And there was, I think, about 17, 18 people that had been in the company before I joined, but we were still pre-Series A. We had this technology that was being used by some of the bigger names in B2B market, in B2B as a whole, but we didn't have a real go-to-market function in place. Nick, our CEO, had just joined the company as well. And so one of the first few things we did was, talk to all our customers. Nick signed contracts with Gartner and Forrester quicker than I've ever seen. And immediately we started briefing these analysts who only now looking back, we think aren't they the ones historically who crown a category as created? And how is that changing today? I think it's an interesting discussion. But all that being said, the analysts listened to our value proposition. They talked to our customers. They demoed the product. And they tried sort of guiding us to market around a category that they already covered. So they said we were proactive customer support, or we were an entrance to the CRM market. And we're gosh, I don't think we're ready to try to take on Salesforce or any of these existing players. And what gave us conviction to not follow that advice was that there was a job, there was a persona, there were people who existed and identified as customer success managers. And it was a small but growing community. They didn't have the resourcing that their sales and marketing kind of brethren had. And, there was an opportunity to really say, hey, we're really early stage. We still have to figure out everything, but let's just figure out a way to make these folks feel supported and to make them heroes, to get them together. So we built a number of different programs around connecting folks that were in the community together, whether that's live events, digital programs like webinars. We created content that spoke to them, that helped to arm them to be great at their jobs. Nothing really around our product in the early days. And coincidentally, a lot of that ended up actually fueling our funnel that built our brand. And, ultimately the company was really built around being able to serve the people in this job. And so that's kind of the story. And only looking back now do we say, hey, that's a category that we created.
Yeah. And so when did the name change happen, the changing the name to Gainsight?
Yeah, around 3 months into the job. And so step one, like week one, was some of these phone calls. We had a bunch of agencies, I think like many early stage startups do when you don't have a ton of people in the role or in the team. So we had somebody working on the website. We had a branding agency like helping us figure out our naming. And what was interesting is we hadn't announced our Series A yet, and we wanted to build up towards this big reveal of funding, of Nick joining, and we thought we would do the rebranding there. But we also were planning a conference at the same time, which was kind of weird, and an industry conference at that. And so the conference needed a name, and so we called it Pulse because we didn't have a company name at the time. And at the actual conference is where we really revealed the name and everything, or I think it was like the month before where we really revealed it. And so at the conference, we had like Pulse, a conference that never existed, presented by customersuccess.org, a brand and URL that basically went nowhere. And they, introducing Gainsights. There were like 3 unknown brands at this event. It wasn't the best look for us early, but luckily a couple of those brands ended up getting built.
Yeah, I love that. And so you had mentioned earlier, Anthony, you said that analysts kind of used to be the ones that got to place the crown, if you will, on whether a category was deemed credible or not. They got to essentially name whether a category existed or not. And you said that there's a fun conversation there as to if that's still how it's happening. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and this is obviously no disrespect to the folks at analyst firms, but historically, if there wasn't a magic quadrant, or if there wasn't a wave, or if there wasn't a official sort of declaration by these folks in Boston that the company or the category existed, it was hard to justify, right? Or it was hard to claim victory. And what's interesting is, I'll speak to customer success just because that's my experience. I don't think anyone would question whether or not there's something here. Ironically, Forrester and Gartner both have customer success teams, but no magic quadrant or wave. And so were we successful? Were we not? Is there a category? And what I think has really helped sort of, at least as marketers, helped us feel better about the fact that there is, are solutions like G2 Crowd and Trust Radius that have sort of taken a little bit of the influence away from some of the analyst community, perhaps, and brought it to the customers. Put the customers at the center of actually declaring what a category is or isn't. And so that's where I find a lot of hope, I guess, is that this shift that we've been evangelizing from vendors to customers, where customers now have all the power, they're speaking categories into existence. And I think it's our job as marketers just to help guide them and help to build a brand that sort of serves them and helps them in their journey. And ultimately, we get to reap a little bit of benefit on platforms like those that help really call the category established.
I love that. So, Anthony, since we announced that we're building a category here, I've had a lot of people approach me at events and via email, just saying that that they're trying to do a similar thing, and they're in the early days. So, if you could kind of go back to those early days, or around that first event, the renaming of the company. What were, kind of looking back on that time, what were some of the critical things that you guys did as a brand? Maybe some specific activities that you guys did that would be extremely helpful for folks early in the category building process to execute as well.
Yeah, so 3 things kind of come to mind for me. The first is actually, I think, in the name of the category that you're building, right? It's content. And for us, it was this like unbelievable focus on creating content that had nothing, frankly, that didn't have as much to do with our product, but everything to do with the jobs to be done, to use that terminology. And so we created like tools and ebooks and blog posts about how to hire in customer success, sample job descriptions, how to justify an investment in customer success to your board or to your CEO, all of the things that we can arm our persona, whether that's our customer persona or just folks in the marketplace that we want to be relevant to find value from us that we delivered for free. We thought that was a great way to sort of start building authentic relationships at scale versus asking them to take a demo of a product that they may or may not even need at the time, right? And so we became then a brand that was a partner in strategy definition. So if you were thinking about customer success, you could hire a big consulting firm, maybe, and explain to them what customer success is, or you can come into the tribe that already speaks your language and is producing a lot of this content for free to help you in your journey. That was sort of the early, one of the big bets we made early that didn't come obviously at a high like capital cost from a marketing budget point of view.
So content, just to kind of reiterate that. So content that really doesn't have to do with your product. It's more focused on helping the persona that you're serving, really. Is that
right.
Being accurate?
Yeah, that's right. And frankly, anything that I learned in that regard was from Maria Pergolino and John Miller and folks at Marketo. And they coin it early stage content. I know it sounds like it's been like a while here, but like that really was the inspiration for us, building early stage content around the job of customer success.
I love it. All right. Yeah. What's the second piece? You alluded to there being three things. What's the second thing?
There's three. Yeah. The second thing is an appreciation that we as the brand don't need to be the ones to deliver the content always, meaning it's not always Gainsight telling the world how to do customer success. I think in time, we've peppered in more of our expertise and kind of what we've learned, kind of being engaged in this market for so long and talking to thousands of folks in the space. But especially in the early days, building a platform for the community to sort of share their points of view, for your customers to share, for folks in the marketplace, and thinking about our job as really building the stage versus being the lead actors or actresses on that stage, I think is pretty transformational, because our job is then to facilitate the exchange and the curation of these best practices, convincing Aaron Levy to come onto that stage and share his perspective versus always having us be just the one channel and voice. That helps us, I think, just build this authenticity and it keeps the perspectives interesting. It's shaped our own thinking, but it really feels like a community-driven approach to building the brand and building the category versus potentially disingenuous, like vendor hiding behind a content strategy, really trying to sell you something, kind of a thing.
The word that I keep thinking of is validation, especially in the early days. Like you're creating this thing that people are like, what? You know, in your case, that maybe there were probably a lot of companies that didn't necessarily have customer success titles in their company. And so they're going, okay, what is this? But they're hearing, I don't know if Aaron Levy he probably came a little bit later in the story, but, having other people validate it by evangelizing for the category instead of you guys always being the one doing that, I would imagine was incredibly helpful.
It was huge. And weirdly enough, Aaron came early. And so I think there's a 2B here of like leverage your networks, whether it's your own professional networks, whether it's your investors or your board that have reach, or the ambitious, courageous cold email, and find a way to get that validation early, because it's just going to accelerate everything else. And so we were very lucky I'd worked with Box. I worked at Box in my early days of my career. Nick knew Aaron really well, and we were very fortunate that he was willing to come up on stage at that first conference 3 months into the job and share his point of view.
That's incredible. What's this third one?
Okay. The third one, I believe the title of the show is B2B Growth. So creating the category is great, but unless you're able to actually connect all that to revenue, it's kind of hard to justify more investment. And so what we did in the early days is we did a really good job of winning the hearts of people. They're like, of course, like we need to help make our customers successful. This makes a ton of sense. And then we would get them into a sales cycle, put a six-figure contract in front of them. They're like, whoa, I don't have any budget for this though. Like, or I can't buy technology for this. And we're like, oh God, like, what are we doing? And so we had to find a way to not just win their hearts, but win their minds. And that's where we started actually doing a lot of, going back to Maria and John, late stage content creation. And so we may have only had 10 customers, let's say, in the early days, but each one of them was a video testimonial explaining why Gainsight in particular is the accelerant to their customer success strategy, or is the way they operationalize customer success within their businesses. we created content like buyer's guides, because a lot of folks never, in category creation, they haven't bought technology to help solve their problem. And so we wanted to actually help them evaluate the marketplace. And of course, we wrote it. And so we're going to try to create some influence there on what to look for. And that carries forward into things like an sample RFP that we wrote, we created, and we took these late stage content assets, which typically live in like a content management system for your sales team to use, and we actually evangelized them at the top of the funnel. So we wanted to teach the world how to buy technology in the category that we were creating. And we want to give them the tools to actually evaluate solutions and work through them. So I think that's been a part of what's helped us go from not just winning their hearts, but winning their minds, is actually shepherding them through the buying process, helping them understand the value and the investment in the category. And then furthermore, the next step of that ROI, investment in our product set as a way to help accelerate that. So that was the missing piece, I think, tying all of this to growth.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me, Anthony. The last thing I want to talk to you about today is a new project that you and your team have been working on that I've been loving.
Yeah.
It's a video podcast, and I think you guys have an audio version of it too, called B2B Creatives. Yeah. And I've just been getting a ton of value out of it. You've talked to a lot of category creators on the show. And I don't know if you'll continue to do that, or if that's just, obviously you've got a network full of them because of what you've done at Gainsight. But talk to us a little bit about the strategy behind B2B Creatives and maybe some aspiration for what you guys want it to turn into.
Yeah, totally. So it's one of those things that probably walks the line between just a topic that I'm immensely passionate about and wanted to, help create some content around and build this community of people who are passionate about building brands in B2B that are human first. But also at Gainsight, big part of our vision and our purpose as an organization is to be living proof that you can win in business while being human first. And so it's not just the customer success management department that is leading this effort. Marketers are orienting around the customer. The sales teams are orienting around the customer. Product teams are building technology and feature sets based on how their customers are using their services. So everyone is really moving to this alignment around the human behind the logo that we sell to. And I find that so interesting and frankly aligned to my own personal values, which is kind of weird in enterprise software sometimes. And so with that, I just got very passionate about this concept of brand, where in B2C, everyone talks about brand. Brand is the most, it's the biggest differentiator. Do you want a Pepsi or Coke, right? Yeah. You align towards a brand that you find, you is part of your tribe, or that speaks to you, Colgate, or whatever other toothpaste exists, right? So in that world, in B2B, for whatever reason, brand is the opposite. It's you can't say the word brand because it's so disconnected from growth from a conceptual point of view, right? It's wasteful. That's dollars that should go into paid search or into your ABM campaigns that you can track. And I think that is such flawed thinking. And some of the best B2B marketers, execs, founders in the world are starting to get ahead of this trend. And so late night watching Netflix one day, I saw the David Letterman show that he's doing on there, which I don't know if he's still doing, by the way. Hopefully it doesn't.
I don't think he is.
Oh, God. But basically, I love the production value. Yeah. I think we as humans want to be entertained. We want to watch something that we enjoy actually watching. And so I was like, well, what if we built something similar, high level of production, Netflix quality kind of production, that interviewed these voices in B2B and talked about topics like category creation, like purpose, like creativity and demand gen, like these words that have historically meant soft skills that I think are actually fundamental to how to build a B2B marketing organization, and build, frankly, just a B2B company in this kind of new chapter. And so we're going to keep doing it, slowly but surely. We've got an episode coming out here, which will probably air by the time our episode airs here, with Dan Rogers, the CMO at ServiceNow, all about purpose. Okay. And so really some great conversations in a sort of intimate format where these folks that are frankly, celebrities in our world, I'm very humbled and lucky that they said yes to being a part of it, are willing to open up and share their playbook. And so very excited about kind of where we're headed with that.
Yeah, I've listened to all of them so far. Keith Kroc's episode, he's the chairman of the board at DocuSign. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to B2B Creatives yet or watched it, I loved Keith Croc's episode, but every single one that I've seen so far has been phenomenal. Keith Croc stands out, but I think just because of the number of categories that he's built is just so impressive.
Yeah. That's the one to watch if you want to. It's category creation. It would be great to have him on the show here, James, at some point.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think you kind of extrapolating what you did about just kind of his journey and doing it over and over and over again, I thought was really, really compelling. So if you're listening to this series of B2B Growth on category creation, definitely go check out Keith Croc's episode, but just go subscribe to B2B Creatives regardless, because you're going to love the quality of the content that Anthony and his team are putting out. Anthony, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you hanging out with me this afternoon. If there's somebody listening to this, they want to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about Gainsight, obviously we want them subscribing to B2B Creatives, but how else can they stay connected with you guys?
Yeah, Twitter is probably good, at Kennada, Kennada, and or at Gainsight HQ. Probably both are good channels for us. But yeah, we're passionate about what we're building. Our story's kind of just getting started, and we're passionate about continuing to chronicle our journey, what we're learning along the way. So excited to meet others that are thinking about the same.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much, Anthony. This has been incredible. So I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks, James.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency at no cost. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.